She was chained to the tracks, her puppies huddled beside her, and the train was seconds away. But just when all hope seemed lost, one man changed everything. What happened next didn't just save 4 lives, it transformed 5 more. This isn't just a rescue story. It's about redemption, second chances, and the quiet strength of a mother's love. What would you have done in that moment? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that restore your faith in humanity. The early morning fog hung thick over the quiet outskirts of Green Creek, Oregon. A narrow rural town cradled by pine-covered hills, Green Creek was the kind of place where time seemed to slow in the colder months. On this particular morning, winter still held the land in a brittle grip. The sky, a muted gray, pressed low above the frost-covered fields. Cold air clung to the ground like a shroud. It was the kind of dawn that settled heavy in the bones, the kind that made silence louder. Just outside the main town, the old railway line curved like a scar across the edge of a long-abandoned mill field. The tracks, weathered and rusting, hadn't seen a freight load in years, but a maintenance train still passed through twice a week. No one paid them much attention. No one expected horror to linger where only wind and steel met. Lucy lay completely still. She was a female golden retriever, roughly 6 or 7 years old, though her malnourished frame made her appear older. Her coat, once surely rich and golden, was now dull and patchy, tinged gray with dried dirt and tangled with brambles. Her ribs showed faintly under her sides, and her soft brown eyes reflected a tired, quiet resolve. A thick, rusted chain looped tight around her neck, its end padlocked to one of the cold steel rails. Beside her were 3 puppies, no older than 5 weeks, small, golden tufts curled tightly against her body. Their eyes fluttered but never strayed far from her warmth. One of them whimpered, pushing closer, more out of instinct than hope. Lucy did not move. She didn't cry or bark. She simply kept her body wrapped around them, shielding them from the damp chill that rose off the earth like breath. She could have escaped. The chain was old, and her strength, if summoned, might have been enough to break free. But if she did, she'd leave them behind. And she could not do that. The tracks began to hum. Somewhere far off, barely perceptible through the mist, the long, mournful call of a train horn pierced the silence. Lucy's ears twitched. The pups stirred. She didn't panic. She didn't resist. Instead, she gently lowered her head, eyes slipping closed. Not from fear, but as if to shield her children from what was coming. William Turner didn't usually take this route. At 54, William was a railway maintenance officer with the Pacific Northwest Line. Tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of frame that had once been imposing but had since softened with age, he moved with the steady weight of someone used to silence. His face was rugged, lined more by grief than time. Pale blue eyes, once sharp, now carried the dull sheen of long-held sorrow. His salt and pepper hair peeked from beneath a thick knit cap, and his breath curled in clouds from beneath a woolen scarf as he walked the tracks. William had taken to volunteering for the morning inspections, partly because he preferred solitude, partly because no one questioned a grieving man who wanted to walk in the cold. It had been 3 years since Sarah died, and Green Creek, while polite, was not a town that lingered long on loss. Sarah Turner had been the son to William's steady moon. Petite and graceful, she'd taught art at the community college and had a laugh like chimes in spring wind. Cancer had taken her quietly, but not quickly. Watching her fade had hollowed something in William that never quite filled back in. Since then, his world had become routine, precise, controlled. He was halfway down the track when he saw the shape. At first, it looked like a pile of leaves or debris. He paused, puzzled. Then, as he approached, the mist thinned, and he saw the motion. The twitch of a tail, a lifted ear. His breath caught. "Jesus," he whispered, rushing forward. William dropped to his knees, eyes darting over the scene. The chain, the locked pad, the pups. He didn't hesitate. Dropping his inspection bag, he rummaged frantically for the small bolt cutter he kept for emergencies. The sound of the train was clearer now, a low metallic growl growing steadily louder. The track beneath his boots began to tremble. The chain was thick, too thick. Cursing, William shoved the bolt cutter aside and reached for the padlock instead. His fingers, numbed by cold, fumbled as he yanked out a universal keyring. The lock was old, likely rusted inside, and the first key snapped in half. The rumble grew deeper. Lucy opened her eyes. William met her gaze. There was no fear in her face, only trust, as if she had already accepted whatever would come. "No," William muttered. "Not today." He forced another key into the lock, gritted his teeth, and twisted hard. It snapped open. He yanked the chain loose, slinging it away, then scooped the first puppy into his coat. The second. The third. Lastly, he gently lifted Lucy. She didn't resist, only let out a soft grunt, eyes still calm, and stumbled back from the track, boots slipping on gravel as the growl became a scream. The train erupted from the curve with a roar, steel and wind and thunder blurring past, just feet behind him. He dropped to his knees, shielding the bundle in his arms as dust and cold blew over him in a violent rush. Then stillness. William stayed frozen, panting, until the last car vanished into the fog. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind in the bare trees. He looked down. Lucy was staring up at him, her head pressed against his chest. The pups wriggled faintly beneath his coat. William exhaled shakily, a sound somewhere between a sob and a laugh. "All right," he whispered hoarsely. "Let's get you home." The late morning sun pushed timidly through the fog over Green Creek, casting a pale amber hue across the frosted landscape. William Turner's cabin sat at the edge of town, where the paved roads gave way to gravel and the scent of pine grew thicker with each step. The house, modest and tucked beneath tall evergreens, bore the weight of silence. Its paint faded, its windows often dark. It hadn't known laughter in years. William opened the front door with his shoulder, careful not to jostle the bundle of warmth and fur wrapped in his coat. The living room was dim, the scent of old wood and dust lingering in the corners. He hadn't expected guests, especially not four with tails. He laid Lucy down first, gently setting the tired mother onto a folded blanket on the couch. She stretched slightly, her ribs rising and falling slowly, and blinked up at him with those soft, amber eyes. The three puppies tumbled from his coat one after the other, blinking in the light, their small bodies wriggling toward the warmth of their mother. They nestled beside her instantly, a golden pile of fluff and size. William stared at them for a moment, his breath still visible in the cold air of the room. He hadn't turned on the heat in weeks. He stepped away and busied himself at the thermostat, unsure why his hands trembled. The moment was interrupted by the distant creak of stairs. Lucas Turner stood in the hallway, tall and thin like his mother had been, with a posture somewhere between slouched indifference and adolescent defiance. At 17, he had his father's quiet features, a square jaw, pale blue eyes, but none of his father's stillness. Lucas was restless, his energy electric and often misplaced. His dark brown hair was tousled from sleep, and he wore an oversized hoodie, half-zipped over worn sweatpants. He paused, blinking at the sight before him. "What the hell?" William looked up, startled, almost defensive. "They were tied to the tracks," he said plainly. "The mom, she wouldn't leave them. I couldn't just leave them there." Lucas walked closer, eyes narrowed as if trying to decide if this was a dream. "You brought home a dog. And 3 puppies." "I guess I did." Lucas crouched next to the couch, watching as the puppies snuggled into Lucy's side. One of them, a chubby, curious little male, stumbled forward, sniffing at Lucas's shoe. He reached down cautiously, brushing the puppy's soft head with his fingertips. "She looks half dead," he murmured. "She's a fighter," William replied. A long silence passed between them. It wasn't that Lucas hated his father. It was more that they had grown used to walking in parallel, never quite colliding, but never truly meeting either. Since Sarah died, the connection between them had thinned into something fragile and easily broken. William buried himself in routine and quiet grief. Lucas retreated into headphones, hoodies, and the digital refuge of online friends and late-night chats. The puppy licked his hand. Lucas cracked a faint smile. "I want to name this one Rusty," he said suddenly. William raised an eyebrow. "He looks like he's been rolling in rust," Lucas added with a smirk, holding up the pup's tiny paw, which had a faint reddish tinge near the toes. "The one curled up like a donut, that's Daisy. And the tiny one with the twitchy nose? Sunny." William didn't protest. He was surprised by how natural it felt to hear names given so quickly, as if Lucas had been waiting for something or someone to fill a space in him too. "All right," William said quietly. "Rusty, Daisy, Sunny." Lucy stirred, lifting her head as if acknowledging the names. Her tail thumped weakly against the couch cushion. Later that afternoon, after William made a pot of instant soup and found some leftover rice and boiled chicken to mash up for Lucy, he stepped outside for firewood. The sun had burned through most of the fog by then, revealing a sky pale blue and still. The cold had a bite to it, but it was no longer biting him from the inside. As he gathered logs, a pickup truck crunched onto the driveway. Out stepped a woman bundled in a puffy beige coat with a faded sheriff's department badge stitched near the shoulder. Deputy Marla Griggs, mid-40s, with streaks of silver in her tightly pinned black hair, was a sharp woman with a deep sense of duty and very little patience for nonsense. She had grown up in Green Creek and seen more than her share of small-town sins. Her eyes were skeptical by default. "You weren't answering your phone, Bill," she said without preamble. "It's off. Battery died." "You all right?" "I'm fine," he replied, gesturing toward the house. "You probably heard by now." "I did." Dispatcher caught wind from the yard. "Said you flagged the track emergency line for a sudden brake override." William nodded. "There was a dog. Actually, tied to the rail just past the mill curve." Marla exhaled sharply, jaw tightening. "Sick people out there. I brought them home. I figured you would." Her gaze softened just slightly. "Need help filing the report?" "I already sent a digital log, photo included. I'll swing by in the morning to finish the paperwork." She gave a short nod, then glanced toward the house. "That Lucas I saw through the window?" "Yeah." Marla paused. "Good to see you two in the same room again." William didn't respond. She let the silence sit a beat, then turned back to her truck. "You call me if anything comes up. And Bill, thanks for not walking past." Inside, Lucas was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, a puppy curled asleep in his lap. Lucy watched him quietly from the couch, her breathing steady now. William paused in the doorway, a log under each arm, unsure what to say or do. He didn't say anything. Instead, he knelt beside his son and started building a fire. The kindling cracked as the flame caught. Warmth spread slowly, cautiously, just like everything else in the house that day. A brisk wind swept through Green Creek that Wednesday morning, rustling the skeletal branches of bare maples and scattering dry leaves across the high school parking lot. The temperature had dropped again overnight, a thin film of frost glinting off windows and car roofs. Inside the red brick building of Green Creek High, the heaters groaned to life, trying in vain to chase away the lingering cold that clung to students' shoulders like unwelcome baggage. Lucas Turner moved down the hallway with his usual quiet steps, earbuds slung loosely around his neck, backpack sagging off one shoulder. He had never liked crowds, especially not the chatter-filled corridors between second and third period. Today, though, the buzz in the air was different, quieter, nervous, like tension was crawling just beneath the surface. He heard it in snippets as he passed. Someone tied dogs to the tracks. They say someone nearly died, try to save them. Man, that's messed up. Lucas kept walking. Jake Coleman spotted him from their usual hangout near the back stairwell and gave a lazy wave. Tall, thick-boned, and built like he belonged on the football field. Though he'd been kicked off last semester, Jake always wore his hoodie too low and carried himself with a casual arrogance. His blonde hair was messy as usual, his smirk half present as he leaned against the wall. Next to him sat Logan Price, dark-haired and wiry, with a face that rarely showed emotion. Logan was the kind of kid who always had a sharp retort ready, but his eyes constantly scanned for threat, like he was used to things going wrong. Emma Reed rounded out the trio, perched on the stair railing. She had dyed orange hair cut unevenly short, sharp cheekbones, and a look that dared people to judge her. Beneath the heavy eyeliner and oversized jacket was a girl who rarely spoke unless it was biting. Most teachers considered them trouble, individually tolerable, but together, volatile. Lucas had been drifting toward their orbit since summer. After Sarah died, and William grew quieter than ever, Lucas found comfort in noise and chaos. Jake offered that in spades. "Yo," Jake greeted, slapping Lucas's shoulder as he approached. "Heard anything new about the dogs?" Lucas shrugged. "Only what my dad told the cops. They're looking into it." Emma scoffed. "Like anyone cares about a few mutts. People are acting like someone murdered a baby." Lucas looked at her, his jaw tightening. "They almost died?" Jake raised his hands in mock surrender. "Whoa, chill. We're just talking. It's all over the news. My cousin sent me a link this morning. Says there's security cam footage being reviewed from a gas station near the old mill road." Lucas blinked. He hadn't heard that part. Logan muttered, "Probably just some drunk weirdo." Lucas didn't reply. His eyes dropped to Jake's phone, which he held loosely in one hand. The screen was open to a messaging app. A conversation paused mid-scroll. Lucas didn't mean to read it, but one line leapt out before Jake could lock it. "I didn't think he'd actually go back there. We just left them for like a couple hours." Lucas's blood ran cold. His gaze snapped up to Jake, who quickly turned the phone face down. "What?" Jake asked too fast. Lucas took a half step back, feeling suddenly off balance. "What did you do?" Jake's smirk faltered. Logan shifted, and Emma's expression turned unreadable. "We didn't mean for it to go that far," Jake said, suddenly defensive. "It was supposed to be a prank. Just scare people or something. We didn't know the train still ran." Lucas stared at him, speechless. Logan spoke up, voice flat. "We found the dogs out near the road. Figured we'd mess around a little. No one was supposed to get hurt." Lucas's fists clenched. "Lucy almost died. My dad almost died." Emma rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. He's a grown man. He chose to get involved." "You left puppies tied to a railroad track?" Lucas said, voice low and shaking. "You could have killed them. And for what? A prank." Jake stepped forward, guilt twisted with defiance on his face. "I didn't know it would go that far. I didn't think you'd freak out like this. You've changed since that dog showed up." Lucas turned and walked away without another word. Back at home that afternoon, the cabin was warmer than usual. The fire crackled softly in the hearth. Lucy lay curled on the couch, her puppies nestled close, their tiny bodies rising and falling with contented breaths. William sat at the kitchen table, going over paperwork from the railway office. He looked up as Lucas entered, his son's face pale and tense. "Everything all right?" William asked. Lucas hesitated, then slowly nodded. "No, but I'll figure it out." William didn't push. But when Lucas crossed the room and sank down next to Lucy, resting his hand on her back, William saw the truth in his eyes. Anger, betrayal, and something else. Resolve. Outside, the sky turned a shade darker as storm clouds edged in from the hills. The wind outside howled low through the pine trees that bordered Green Creek, pushing against the windows of the Turner cabin in steady waves. Inside, the fire had nearly gone out, its warmth reduced to a soft ember glow as the room sat silent. Lucas Turner paced slowly across the wooden floor, one hand resting atop his head, the other curling and uncurling restlessly by his side. His face, lit dimly by the amber light of a standing lamp, was drawn with turmoil. He hadn't spoken much since returning home from school. Not to his father, not to anyone. Lucy lay nearby on the couch, her golden head resting atop her front paws. The puppies, Rusty, Daisy, and Sunny, slept in a pile beneath a fleece blanket, faint twitching in their paws hinting at puppy dreams. Lucy's warm gaze occasionally followed Lucas's movement, but she made no sound. Upstairs, William sat at the desk in his wife's old art studio, flipping through the remains of a half-used sketchbook. Sarah had filled it with watercolor outlines, nature scenes mostly, mountains, birds, silhouettes of trees under vast skies. She had been tall and slender, with delicate wrists and a calm grace to her that softened every room she entered. Her illness had been long, and near the end, she'd drawn almost compulsively, trees bending in the wind, animals nestled in snow, things clinging to life in quiet resistance. William closed the sketchbook and exhaled, then stood when he heard footsteps on the stairs. "Dad," Lucas said, entering the doorway. "Can we talk?" William nodded and followed him down. Back in the living room, Lucas turned to face him. "I know who did it. The dogs. I know who tied them to the tracks." William's body tensed, but he said nothing. "It was Jake, and Logan, and Emma too." Lucas's voice cracked, then steadied. "They said it was just a prank. They didn't think anyone would get hurt." William slowly sat down across from him, hands folded in front of him. "You're sure?" Lucas nodded. "And what are you going to do?" Lucas looked toward Lucy and the pups, then back at his father. "I want them to come here. I want them to tell you what they did. I want them to see what they almost destroyed." A long silence passed. "All right," William said softly. "Set it up." The next afternoon, Jake's rusted pickup rumbled down the gravel drive, its muffler spitting exhaust with every jolt. Logan sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, while Emma rode in the back, earbuds stuffed into her ears, but no music playing. They were tense, quiet, an unusual state for the trio. Lucas stood on the porch, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He didn't wave. Inside the house, William waited with a mug of coffee, silent and unmoving. As the three teens stepped into the cabin, the first thing they noticed was the warmth. The second was the smell of pine wood, old books, and something faintly sweet. And then the dogs. Lucy looked up from her resting spot. The puppies were awake now, tumbling around the small play area William had built from cardboard boxes and blankets. Emma stiffened slightly, eyes lingering on the tiny, vulnerable forms. William's gaze moved from face to face. "I'm not calling the police," he said quietly. "Not yet." The words hung in the air like smoke. "But I need you to understand what you've done. Not just by saying sorry, but by proving it." Jake looked at the floor, jaw tight. "What do you mean?" "You'll help care for them," William replied. "For the next 2 weeks, every day after school, you're here. Feeding them, cleaning up after them, helping them walk. No excuses." Logan scoffed. "You want us to play puppy babysitter?" William's voice didn't rise. "No, I want you to feel what it's like to be responsible for something small, something fragile, something that depends on you." Emma met his eyes, and for the first time, there was no sarcasm in her gaze. "You agree?" William asked. The silence stretched. Then Jake gave a reluctant nod. Logan followed with a half-muttered grunt. Emma shrugged. "Fine." That evening, while the teens had gone home and the cabin was quiet again, Lucas sat with William by the fireplace. "Do you think it's going to work?" Lucas asked. William sipped his coffee. "I don't know, but it's a start." Nearby, Rusty climbed into Lucas's lap and yawned. Lucy gave a low, approving rumble and closed her eyes. Outside, the wind had softened. The days that followed settled into an unlikely rhythm. Every afternoon, as the last school bell echoed through Green Creek High, 3 teenagers made the quiet, reluctant trek to the Turner cabin, their shoes crunching over the gravel drive, their mood somewhere between obligation and quiet resistance. Yet, beneath the weight of expectation, something else had begun to stir, something they didn't yet have words for. Jake Coleman arrived first on Thursday, same as the day before. His hoodie was still pulled low, and his hand was still jammed deep into his pockets. But today he knocked on the door instead of barging in. William opened it and stepped aside without a word. Rusty barked once, a sharp, excited yelp, and dashed toward the doorway on awkward, oversized paws. Jake knelt instinctively, catching the pup mid-leap. The motion startled him at first. Then, for the first time, he laughed. Rusty was growing quickly now, bolder, hungrier, and more curious by the hour. His coat had begun to regain its golden sheen, and the reddish tinge that had inspired his name was now deeper, more distinct. He had a habit of chewing on shoelaces and chasing any moving shadow, but he never strayed far from Jake. Jake, once the loudest, roughest of the group, found himself speaking in a low voice whenever he was around Rusty. He scratched behind the pup's ears, learned the right temperature for formula milk, and built a cardboard tunnel just to keep him entertained. He even asked William, awkwardly, if dogs remembered people. William had only said, They remember who shows up. Logan Price was always the last to arrive. Still stoic, still quiet. Tall, wiry, and sharp-eyed, Logan kept his sleeves pulled over his hands and rarely made eye contact. Yet it was Sonny, the smallest and most sensitive of the puppies, who clung to him like he was gravity itself. Sonny had a habit of trembling when startled, and she always waited a beat before approaching strangers. But with Logan, she was fearless, tugging at his hoodie strings, licking the corners of his fingers, and falling asleep curled inside his jacket pocket. The boy who rarely smiled now found himself whispering stories only she could hear. William observed them one evening from the kitchen, drying dishes, and noticed Logan silently tucking a blanket under Sonny's chin like she were royalty. Emma Reed, in contrast, had tried hard to act unimpressed. Her black boots clunked on the cabin floor, her orange-dyed hair pulled back into a messy knot. She shrugged off every question, every suggestion, but Daisy had been the one to crack her armor. Daisy, the smallest female pup, had grown weaker the past few days, less playful, less eager to feed. William, ever cautious, had gently asked Emma to keep an eye on her during playtime. Emma rolled her eyes, but complied. That evening, when Daisy began to shiver uncontrollably, Emma panicked. She wrapped the pup in her scarf, held her to her chest, and shouted for William with a fear that split her voice. William came running, took one glance, and nodded. "She's got a fever. Dehydration, maybe." He gave her instructions, handed her a tiny syringe of electrolyte solution. Emma, hands shaking, followed them precisely. For hours, she didn't leave Daisy's side. And when Daisy whimpered and finally licked the tip of Emma's finger, she broke down crying, silent, hot tears streaking her mascara, dripping on her denim sleeves. Lucas had watched it all unfold from the living room window. He hadn't said much since the confrontation, but now he nodded quietly whenever they entered. He offered advice on feeding schedules and suggested toys made from old socks. He watched the way they handled the dogs, saw how their posture changed, less defensive, more present. Even William was different. Once so withdrawn, William now joined them in small conversations, asking about their school day or recommending songs from a dusty old stereo that hadn't played since Sarah's last birthday. He offered cookies one afternoon. Nobody said thank you, but they all ate. Then, one day, the snow returned. Thick flakes drifted from the sky, blanketing the cabin in white. Rusty barked at the falling snow, chasing it with wild enthusiasm. Sonny sniffed delicately at it before promptly sneezing. Daisy, finally strong enough to explore, patted after her siblings, tail wagging like a metronome. Jake built a small ramp from old plywood so the puppies could climb onto the porch without help. Logan sat near the fire, Sonny cradled in his arms, staring at the crackling logs with a softness no one had seen before. Emma took a photo of Daisy with her old phone, cheeks red, nose running, but smiling. That night, after they left, William found a handwritten note left on the kitchen counter and signed. "I didn't know I could care about anything again. Thanks for not giving up on us." He stared at it for a long time, then tucked it into the back of Sarah's sketchbook. The snow had mostly melted by the time February turned its face toward spring. Green Creek, once shrouded in gray skies and silence, began to stir awake. The mornings still carried a chill, but the afternoons brought slivers of golden light that spilled through branches and reflected off thawed earth. Birds returned to the treetops. Patches of green peeked through old snow. And in the Turner cabin, healing unfolded in quiet, steady ways. Lucy sat on the porch, her lean golden body curled in a loose crescent as she watched her puppies tumble across the front yard. She had filled out now, her ribs no longer sharp, her eyes no longer hollow. The fur along her flanks had grown back, soft and honey gold in the sunlight. Though still gentle, her gaze had sharpened, her posture prouder. She moved with the grace of a mother who had seen the worst and stood through it. Rusty chased a ball across the uneven grass, clumsy and joyful, his legs still growing into his oversized paws. Daisy nosed through a patch of moss, head tilted, ears flopping as she stumbled upon a butterfly. Sunny stayed closest to the porch steps, cautious but curious, her small frame casting long shadows in the afternoon light. Inside, Lucas leaned against the doorway, arms folded as he watched his father fix the loose screen on the kitchen window. William was kneeling beside the frame, tool belt snug against his waist, silver hair tousled by the wind slipping in through the open door. "Need a hand?" Lucas asked, his tone more confident now, lighter. William looked up, smiling faintly. "You volunteering?" Lucas walked over, knelt beside him. "Don't get used to it." They worked in silence for a few minutes. Then Lucas cleared his throat. "Dad," he began, voice quieter. "I used to think you blamed me. You never said it, but after Mom died, it felt like you folded into yourself. Like you forgot I was still here." William set down his screwdriver and turned, his expression open, vulnerable in a way Lucas rarely saw. "I didn't forget," William said slowly. "I just didn't know how to carry both our grief. I thought I was protecting you by not breaking down. But all I did was disappear." Lucas blinked, eyes moistening. "I needed you. I still do." William reached over, pulled his son into a firm, warm embrace. "And I'm here now. I swear to you, I'm not leaving you alone in this again." Outside, Lucy barked softly, drawing their attention. Rusty had cornered a pine cone and was triumphantly parading it before his sisters, who chased after him in a flurry of energy. The sunlight bathed them all in a soft golden glow. Later that evening, as the sky blushed with the colors of dusk, the cabin hosted an unusual sight. Jake, Logan, and Emma gathered in the living room for what William jokingly called a graduation. Jake, his hair trimmed neatly now, his hoodie replaced with a denim jacket, sat cross-legged near the fireplace, Rusty curled up against his thigh. There was a quiet pride in Jake's expression, the kind that came from small victories hard won. Logan leaned in the doorway, Sunny nestled in his arms like a blanket. He said little, but the subtle way his fingers moved through Sunny's fur spoke volumes. His steel-cold demeanor had softened into something quieter, more observant, more kind. Emma, wearing a charcoal sweater and a smile she didn't bother hiding, had Daisy perched beside her on the couch. Her phone buzzed now and then with texts, but she ignored them, content to be present. She'd applied for a veterinary assistant internship last week, something she hadn't told anyone yet. William stood and addressed them, his tone half fatherly, half formal. "You came here as punishment," he said, "but you stayed long enough to make it something else. I think you've earned a right to take something good from this." He gestured toward the puppies. "If you're ready." Jake immediately nodded. "Rusty's mine. I already bought him a harness. Don't worry, it fits." Emma grinned. "Daisy's coming with me. I'm not going anywhere without her." Logan hesitated for a breath, then said simply, "Sunny doesn't like loud places." "I do, so I'll be her peace." Lucas looked to William, and his father nodded. "And Lucy?" Jake asked. Lucas turned toward the porch, where Lucy sat watching them through the open screen door. "She's staying," he said, "with us." That night, as the sun dipped low and the first stars peeked out above the trees, the cabin glowed with warmth. William prepared hot cocoa, his first time doing so in years, and the group gathered around the fire. They shared stories, real ones. Jake talked about his older brother who left town. Emma confessed she'd never really liked animals, until Daisy. Logan revealed that Sunny had stopped his nightmares, the ones he never talked about. Lucas sat next to William, a blanket draped across both their shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, he didn't feel like he was waiting for something to return. It was already here. Outside, Lucy lay quietly in the cool grass, head lifted toward the soft sounds of laughter and clinking mugs. Her pups darted around her, wrestling and tumbling, safe beneath a sky that no longer threatened. Her eyes shimmered, reflecting the firelight from inside, a gentle mix of calm, forgiveness, and something far more powerful: hope. Sometimes the greatest changes begin with small acts of kindness. This story reminds us that healing can come from the most unexpected places, through forgiveness, responsibility, and the courage to care when it's hardest. In a world that often feels cold and distant, may we all choose to be the person who shows up, who stays, who loves. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Leave a comment to tell us what moment moved you most. And if you believe in second chances, type amen below. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that lift the spirit. May God bless you and your family, wherever you are.